Hi, Jeffy Gear with Common Folk Self-Reliance. Whether we're prepping or bugging out, whether we're hiking or trekking or we're in a survival situation, thermoregulation is one of the most important things that we'll have to achieve if we want to survive that situation. Most of the time it's okay to have a big open fire, but sometimes the type of shelter you build won't allow that. What I've worked on here is a project that can be stored in anybody's bug out location. It can be stored in any kind of shelter you have out in the wilderness that you want to return to. You can pack it, you can trek with it. I wouldn't backpack with it, it's a little heavy, but you can keep it around wherever you need it, and they're cheap enough that you can make multiples and have them laying in locations if you should need it. I've taken a 1-gallon paint can, created a 5-wick super candle inside, gave it air and ventilation, and then I've taken 2 terracotta pots and I bolted them together, and this works as a thermal re-emitter. The heat from the candle is actually coming up and warming this entire terracotta setup, and it's evenly dispersing heat. The thing about this is that it also covers your open flame, so if you're in an enclosed super shelter type of setup, an igloo, maybe a lean-to or a double lean-to where you really don't want to have too much of an open fire going, this will provide a modicum of safety. I'll explain more about it as we talk about building it, but the first thing you're going to need to know is what you're going to need to build this thing. Obviously, you're going to need a 1-gallon paint can. You're going to need a 3/8 drill bit. You're going to need some number 16 or 16 gauge trapper's wire. I'll explain why we'll need that later. You're going to need a 6-inch and a 4-inch terracotta pot with a 3-inch bolt. You're going to need 4 wide washers. And you're going to need 4 nuts. Or excuse me, 3 nuts. You only need 3, but buy 4th. What the heck? They're 11 cents. We'll talk about it more as we build it. So first things first, we're going to make dots on here that we can drill out later for air holes in order to keep it ventilated. I'm going to do 1 dot on every inch mark all the way around. You guys get the picture. Well, the next thing I'm going to do is put starter holes with the push punch. That'll help act as a pilot for the drill bit. Now I've taken a 3/8 inch drill bit. That's 3/8 inch drill bit to put holes on every inch mark. That allows the candle to breathe. Okay, now what I've done is use some 16 gauge trapper's wire to build a rig across the top, and I suspended 5 9-inch heavy pre-wax candle wicks, making sure that the bottom of the wick with the metal tab is touching the bottom of the can. And I did them in a cross fashion with one in the center. Right now, Bridget is melting wax on an old cook stove in the garage in a safe environment. There's nothing around to burn if this were to spill and catch fire. Remember, if you're going to do this part, have an adult with you. Do not attempt to do this alone if you are underage. The type of candles we used were the type of candles you can get at the dollar store that come in the little glass bottles. And they're $1 a piece. I can get 10 of them. That fills up a gallon can with a few extra odds and ends candles I had lying around. We just got a pot of boiling water and held these in the water until the candles pulled loose from it. It's probably the cheapest candle you're going to find. Okay, now it's time to pour the hot wax in. Notice I have silicone protected mittens here, so we need to be very careful. If you're a child, please have an adult do this part for you. You can get seriously burned. Very carefully now. You may find you need to readjust your wicks immediately afterwards. And now the plan is to simply let the candle cool. Let's take a look at what the inside of it looks like. You can see the wax level, about an inch below those holes. That's good enough for me. If we fill it too full, we got to worry about melt over. We'll come back when this is cool. And here we have our finished super candle, all 5 wicks in there. And all we have to do now is trim each wick about a ½ inch up from the candle surface. There we go. Now it's time to make our terracotta pot assembly to hold the heat. We're going to take our 6-inch pot. The first thing we're going to do is put a washer down and a bolt, and that will help to hold the heat in. Then we'll take a larger washer, put it on the inside, screw the thing down with a nut, and we're only going to do this finger tight because if using tools at this point would crush your terracotta pot. Then it's game over. Back to the store. Another $1.98. Sorry, that's 3 inches. I got to thread that down there. I know it's taken a while. The next thing we're going to do is put another bolt or nut down, and that nut is going to decide how deep our secondary terracotta pot sits. Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you, we want that to sit pretty close to level with the other pot. Rims being almost flat across. So, let's do it this way. Let's put the large one in. And our 4-inch pot. We'll see if that's level. We need to go a little deeper. There we go, that's pretty level. Okay, we put our last washer in, put our last nut on. Now I'm going to remind you, when you take this off, you're going to want to make sure you have good heavy gloves there because it's going to be warm when you want to blow out your candles. Make it tight against the other one. And there we go, our assembly's complete. As you can see, we've taken our 16 gauge trapper's wire that we used to suspend our wicks, and we've bent it and put it over the top there, so that will also give a little bit of lift and ventilation to the terracotta pots when we put them on. If you just put it right down on top of that can, even with the 3/8 inch holes, you'll snuff it out. You need as much ventilation as you can get to it. And now you just take the terracotta pots and put them right over the top, and there you go. Now remember that this is going to get very hot as time goes by. It takes a while to warm up, but once it's warmed up, you're going to want to make sure that you have a glove to remove the pot when you're done, or that you just get down here on the sides and blow your candle out, just like that. Letting this still continue to readmit the heat, and it will. It'll stay warm for, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes, maybe a half hour. The clay actually works as a thermal readmitter. It traps the heat and holds heat and allows it to permeate the room. It keeps the heat around longer. It also protects the inside of your shelter from open flame. You'd hate to have something fall down in there, flare up, and cause a fire. Now I've taken some waterproof matches and stuck them inside a plastic envelope there. And what I'll do is I'll take a piece of Gorilla Tape and put it on the inside of the lid. So that way we always have some way to light our candle. The reason I use the 16 gauge trapper's wire specifically is because it's big enough around to give enough vent room, just like a coat hanger, but when I'm done I can bend it and stick it right inside my can, and it bends right back into shape. It's easily malleable with the hands. Even when we're done with the candle, everything folds up nice and neat to go inside there. We've got our matches, and then we just tamp it down with our multi-tool and use our multi-tool to open it again when we need it. I would find some kind of old wool blanket pieces or something to wrap around this and store it, especially if you're going to be transporting it. It could be kind of fragile to transport if you were going to sled this thing over a long trek. But most people nowadays are learning hot tenting, so they don't need to worry about that. Keep this part of the unit dry if you're going to store it for any amount of time. Now that you've learned to do this to yourself, you can see that keeping a form of heat around without using up fire and fuel is pretty easy with just a few dollars spent at your local hardware store. You could spend $100 on the smallest stoves and the coolest gadgets, but once they run out of their fuel, you're out of fuel. If we ran this out of wax, if we were in a long-term situation, we could fill this with animal fats, any kind of grease, oils, whatever we need, as long as we had some kind of wicking in there to keep the flame going and re-emitting the terracotta pot. So there you have it. This is the 1 gallon super candle terracotta re-emitter, or whatever you want to call it. Safe journeys.